have anything else?
I don't know. Do we?
I don't think so.
And we got 50 minutes, so
Some good Halloween content.
Yeah.
I think we got
very timely.
Yeah. Actually, we still have to do the Diversity Month podcast, so we still got to get that scheduled.
Yeah. I want to bring Yvonne in for that.
Would she be able to be here in person?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because I'm thinking we could just like interview her
Mm-hmm.
maybe or something, like have her answer some, or me and her just have a dialogue for, 25 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And maybe base it around Diversity Month.
And that's exactly what we did, folks. What you just heard is a clip from the Play Hard section of this 312 podcast. The voices were myself, Tom Simmons, Everett Anderson, and Alicia Washington. Our Halloween-themed Play Hard segment was recorded when Everett was up here from Texas, and about a week later we were joined by Yvonne Alston for the Work Hard section, which focused on Diversity Month and tackled such topics as the importance of Jedi, the Great Resignation, and how company culture plays into that. We got a long podcast here for you folks, but stick around because there were great conversations. Work Hard kicks off now, and stick around afterwards for the rest of Play Hard. Welcome to 312, the HRP podcast. I'm Tom Simmons, content creator here at HRP, and I am joined today by
Alicia Washington, Director of Marketing and Jedi at HRP.
Yvonne Alston, Chief Culture Architect, Founder and Principal of Indelible Impressions Consulting.
Great. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And Alicia, do you want to lead off our conversation?
Sure. So it's October, so we are celebrating Global Diversity Awareness Month, which is a month where we pay tribute to the diverse minds and beliefs held by all cultures around the world. It is essentially an acknowledgement that we should remember and understand the value of each human being, regardless of their nationality, color, race, sex, gender, country of origin, language, or otherwise. So we wanted to bring Yvonne Alston here today. Thank you, Yvonne, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Excited to be here.
Yes, definitely. So Yvonne is HRP's DEI consultant, and we started our DEI journey last year to create a program here for HRP, as we call HRP's Jedi program. Jedi stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And so Yvonne's been a huge part of that, and we're really excited to have her here today and to have a discussion about diversity in the workplace, the importance of diversity, the importance of culture. And so we're super excited to get started. So, Yvonne,
Yes.
what I wanted to talk about today was the importance of having a Jedi program at a company or in their firm. Obviously, you and I have worked together a lot, the HRP's Jedi program. But why is it important for a company to have a Jedi program?
Yeah. So, right now in society, we're seeing this, a lot of movement, right, in terms of the culture of society, what's important to folks. And everybody often refers back to, the killing of George Floyd as part of the impetus to change. And certainly around the racial reckoning that we see happening in society, the ripple effects that has actually had nationally and even globally. And so through that and through people raising their voices and being more aware of some of the ills, one might say, of society and what people are being challenged with, there became this heightened sensitivity within the workplace, within organizations, for people who were feeling very strongly about social justice out in community, but then started to laser focus it a little bit more on social justice within organizations. And so that shined a really bright light on this dynamic of culture. What is the culture of an organization? Is there, based on the acronym, justice, equity, diversity, or inclusion? And if there's not, what can we do about it? And so I think a lot of organizations, certainly in the wake of George Floyd, right, started putting out these statements about where they stand on some of these social justice issues. And as we know, some organizations got called out for making statements, but yet still having a poor internal culture existing within their orgs. And so this kind of really gave this very strong birth to the movement and the importance of Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I noticed it. I kind of felt the impact from a personal perspective back when that murder occurred, and also seeing a shift in the need and response from a lot of companies and organizations too, like associations that I was a part of. And in one specific association, SMPS, which is a national organization, but we have a chapter here in Connecticut, I had already been in the position as task force leader for their DEI program. And it was a year prior to, 2020. So we started it in 2019. So, but that really, it gave more life to the task force. We had more people asking to join. So there definitely was a shift. And the conversation I also noticed was happening more in the workplace. Like we started talking about things, and I even see that now with our Jedi program and the training that you presented here at HRP earlier this year, where people are feeling more comfortable to have these conversations at work or even share experiences that they had either at HRP or in previous companies. A lot of it was at previous companies, and things that their companies did not address. They swept it under the rug. And I feel like because HRP is embarking on this journey, we are seeing people with, feeling very positive, very hopeful for like the change that it's going to bring, by having a program. We're currently looking to see what we can do at the management level right now. Because I think a lot of people want to know, like, okay, they know it's important to have the program, or they know we should have it, but how do I get started? And you and I are going to be talking more about, what we could be doing from, the top management and working our way down. We know that there's tons of stuff we can do relative to affinity groups and things like that, but I'm really looking forward to, seeing how we can engage people and really starting to bring awareness and acknowledgement to things that are important and that how they really affect, people's day to day.
Yeah. And, I want to applaud HRP, right, for as a leader in the industry, for taking it so seriously, for the leadership of HRP to say, hey, we kind of understand what's going on in society, and we understand that we have a role to play, right, because we interact with the public on our projects, right? We employ people from different walks of life. And so it's very important that we have some core principles that align with our value and our mission here at the organization, but that we're building this culture that is representative of that. And so, again, I applaud HRP's leadership. I applaud you for stepping up into that position and picking up that mantle and say, I will be a part of leading that effort. And it's important, I think, for every organization to be very thoughtful about the culture of their organization. What kind of environment are they creating for the people who are spending a large majority of their day and their lives? And if you're not physically at work because of the pandemic, but you're working remotely or wherever it is that you're working from, that there's that dedication there, right? Mm-hmm. To the organization, to your particular job role, et cetera. But to also not negate the value of the relationships that occur and the experiences that folks have during their working day in the environments where they are, especially when they're on site, right? Mm-hmm. And so how are we interacting with one another in a meaningful way that brings positivity, as you noted, where we feel that we are safe to express ourselves in all of the dimensions of diversity that we each hold, right? In all of our intersectionality, whether that's across the dimensions of diversity when it comes to race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, those from different socioeconomic statuses, past and present, religion. all of those things. These are all topics of what is important to us all and are a huge part of our identities. Mm-hmm. And so for organizations like HRP to take lead and say, hey, we understand that this is important. And so we want the culture that exists here to be focused on the mission and the values of the organization, but also to recognize those that do add value to our org from an intellectual skill set, capability set, that they have personal value to the organization. And so that's part of what your Jedi program is doing. It's giving that microphone, if you will, to people, to your employee base and your workforce to say, we care about how you feel about working here. We're invested in that because you matter both personally and professionally.
Great segue into the next thing I actually wanted to talk about was the great resignation that we're seeing in the news, and how that aligns with culture. And what I want to also talk about with regards to that is the importance of creating that pipeline of diversity to a company, right? Because what's happening right now, what they're calling the great resignation, right? Like what's happening right now is that it's really hard to find people, good employees. I mean, we're hiring right now, HRP, just so you know, everybody, we're hiring, check our website. But, we're constantly, we're looking for people. And there's, as you and I discussed, Yvonne, it's an employees market right now.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And like it's a seller's market, it's an employees market right now. So it's really hard to find good applicants or even, candidates, right? So how does that tie into, culture, and then also the importance of creating that pipeline that a lot of companies, I think, are having challenges with right now?
Yeah. So there's a lot of data out right now, a lot of, political pundits and news commentary right throughout the media as to really what is at the core of the Great Resignation. And so people, obviously they point to the pandemic, right, as one factor. But it's really interesting when you kind of fix your lens and you look a little bit deeper and you get into some of the details of it. It's not necessarily pay. Pay is a small portion of it. But from the pandemic, people had an inordinate amount of time home. People couldn't go out and do the things that they used to do. So a lot of people started to become extremely introspective and started really thinking about their lives, their mortality, all of those kind of facets, and really started thinking about where and how am I spending most of my time? And as it relates to the workplace, am I truly happy there, right? Or I might make great money, right? But I'm working like a dog. I'm working a crazy amount of hours, and I'm really unhappy with the dynamics between me and my manager or my team, or I'm realizing that the culture of the organization is really toxic. And so that level of introspection and kind of sitting with that information for a time, rather than just being on autopilot and going into the office day in, day out, people are starting to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to have to leave parts of myself at the door before I walk into an organization. I don't want to deal with the microaggressions anymore. This is causing me mental health issues that I never really took time to think about and focus on when I was just kind of in the day-to-day rat race of work, home, maybe kids or other, ways that people spent their time. And they're like, you know what? I'm done. And so it's not just the pay factor, it's the culture. The culture is a key driver of the Great Resignation. And so you have so many companies now who are looking and saying, we wonder why these ships are out in the oceans kind of sitting there with all this cargo, right? Like that's a big topic right now in the media of like, hey, we have all these products and they're sitting on these huge cargo ships. We don't have the workforce. We don't have the people to actually do this. And it's because the people are saying, until you treat me as a valued human being, not just the transactional nature of employee-employer, but until I feel valued as an individual within an organization, I'm out. I'm leaving. That's it. And so it's leaving a lot of employers in a lurch. And as you mentioned, when you're seeking candidates, right? The other facet is that candidates are being very intentional about which companies they want to go and work with next. And if they sense either through website, through media reports or anything like that, that the culture's off and this isn't somewhere where I feel like I can bring my full authentic self to the workplace, where my value personally and professionally is regarded, where I can have a voice and there's psychological safety, right? I don't have to worry about being penalized or retaliated against because I have a different opinion. They're not interested in working for those orgs. And so you're starting to see this where, as you mentioned, the employees are now in the driver's seat. Whereas before it was the organizations who were saying, we have all these great benefits, yada, yada, yada. This is why you should come work for us. And employers are saying, but how will you treat me when I get there? And if I don't sense that I'm going to be treated well, thanks, but no thanks.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think, too, what I'm seeing with employees that, especially to your point about working remote, they want that position, off the rip. They're like, I want to work from home full time. Yeah. And a lot of positions aren't really like that right now. Like here at HRP, we have a very flexible work at home policy and, but that's really case by case, different situations, different managers, but we have a flexible environment in general. But, when you're hiring someone in, like remote isn't really like, if it is an office position, we need you here, at least even initially the first 6 months during your probation period and, making sure that you're getting the right training and things like that. But there are people that are just asking for remote positions. And let me tell you, I'm sure they're finding them, because a lot of companies have went remote during this time, but it has been, we're getting a lot more questions in the interview as opposed to asking more questions in the interview. Yeah, for sure. So, relative to the pipeline, part of our Jedi program, which is really important, I've talked a lot about this with our CEO about the importance of creating that pipeline, because I think a lot of companies who recognize the lack of diversity in their company, they have to also recognize the recruitment process and like what are we doing to open up a bigger pipeline or more pipelines, I should say, right, to different universities, different communities. I think that it's pretty typical for companies like in AEC world, right? So engineering, architecture companies to recruit from the same colleges and universities that the principals came from. It's very common to do that in our industry, I've seen. And so really taking an approach to, reach out to different universities or reach out to different communities and, really kind of getting involved to teach even the young kids, about the services that their company offers. Because we do notice that there are a lot of numbers there's a lot of data that shows, specific groups of people not really entering in the architecture, industry or majoring in architecture, majoring in geology, things like that. So, I feel very strongly that if we can contribute anyway as a company, right, to help with the future of our industry is really what we're going to see the change happen over time, because Jedi is not something that just is an overnight thing. I mean, it takes years and lots of commitment and lots of time and lots of compassion and empathy and all those things to really, create this type of inclusive environment that we want. But I really feel strongly about, creating that pipeline from the right place, starting it and doing it right.
Yeah. Agreed. And, when I think about pipeline, it's really both an internal and an external factor, right? So you have the external factor that you spoke about. How does an organization really tether and connect to the community where it exists and the communities in which it serves? And that's really important to be thoughtful about that from an organizational standpoint. What schools do you have a relationship with? And not just elementary, the cute little kids, and help them to think about the possibility of different careers, things that they perhaps were not exposed to before HRP got involved, and other organizations certainly as well. So that's one aspect, is tethering to the schools, right? And making sure that young adults know that there are viable career options for you here, but then also tethering to the advanced education, right? So when you think about striking relationships with key colleges and universities, right? You and I have talked about the importance of making sure that there are recruiting efforts in not just the schools that the principals went to, but also historically Black colleges and universities, certain colleges and universities that have a focus on various dimensions of diversity, whether that's different sexual orientations, whether that's disabilities, different religions, things like that. That all adds to the value and the richness of the culture of an organization. So that's the external pipeline, right? How do you strike those partnerships and that connection with those communities to make them aware of the potential opportunities of the organization? But then what do you do when you get them here? Right. And that's where that internal pipeline is really important. I will say, as a Black woman, and specifically in communities of color, what I've experienced in my career path prior to launching my own firm was, okay, we get you here and we talk a good game, but once you get here, all of a sudden that ceiling gets real low. And then if you are able to ascend, well, then the air gets really rare up there for people who look like me, people who come from my walk of life, people who have had those same lived experiences as I have. So it's really important that when you bring folks in, that there's a clear pipeline and pathway to help them realize their dreams, to help them thrive, to help them have the career trajectory that they want for themselves within your organization. And that's a key factor, not just in attracting top diverse talent, but retaining top diverse talent. You have to create a pathway to leadership, a pathway to C-suite. You can't just say, oh, we got you here. This is great. Now we're a diverse organization, round of applause for us, and then just kind of go on about the business. If people don't feel like they have a way to grow, to excel, intellectually, financially, and economically, they're going to jump ship sooner than you're going to want them to. And as you know, hiring is expensive. It is incredibly expensive to onboard new talent, to offer them benefits and programs and all of that. And the last thing you want is to properly groom them, right? Get them to be subject matter experts within your organization and to have them then leave.
Right.
So the pipeline, the internal pipeline, and getting the right mix of diverse folks there, as well as what you do when you get them there, and making sure that they have a pathway to their career aspirations is so very important.
Yes, I agree with that. And, I think about how, here at HRP, we are always looking at that, and we've made a lot of opportunities for people here at HRP who were working in different departments. I mean, we have a good group of people that can say, oh, well, I used to be in this department, then I moved to this department. I mean, Tom actually is one of those people.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those things that I feel like we don't internally, or even when we are interviewing people, talk about enough, that we do have that. And one of the things that I have on my very long list of hopes and dreams for our program, our Jedi program, is to have that, written out. Here are the opportunities for every department and for every manager to be, pushing for that, at every review and even quarterly review. So in our department, we have our yearly review, and I review the staff, but then we meet, every quarter or every 6 months after that, to just check in and say, how are things are going after what we talked about. We go over the org chart that we have in our group to see, okay, this is where the opportunities are. And so, but to do that in just a small segment of my group here at HRP, it would be great to kind of do that from a bigger level, so that everyone in the company knows what the opportunities are everywhere, right? Because like I said, a lot of the people who've made moves and found opportunities in other departments, they weren't in the department that they found an opportunity. They moved to another one. Yeah. So I think that is a huge thing with Jedi, when I talk about it in the company, I talk about retention and how it really increases the retention rate of our staff, by having a Jedi program and by creating these or this environment of, inclusivity.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be curious to hear from Tom, since the launch of the Jedi program as an employee, how are you feeling about where the culture was versus where it is now? What's been the impact directly to you?
I think now I've noticed a greater degree of thoughtfulness in the way that people speak to one another here, that I've experienced directly and that I've internalized myself. People are certainly both more thoughtful, but also more open to conversations about how they speak to each other and how we communicate with one another. And I found that to be a very positive area of growth. And there's generally a feeling, I think, of being empowered to have those kinds of conversations that we might have avoided in the past.
Wow, that's huge, right? And that's what increases, I would imagine for you as it would for other employees, just, the fact that my voice is now valued in a different way. We've moved from this, we can only talk about things and address certain topics and aspects based on what's politically correct, right? Versus like, this is a topic because there are things that are happening in society and communities that are really important to me as an individual. And do I have the space and the opportunity to articulate that, not in a confrontational way, but just as what I'm thinking about and what's important to me and how I can share that, and that there's safety in the environment for which I can do so. And also to your point, Tom, that people are being much more thoughtful, right, about the way that they say and do things, because they understand where the culture is right now within the organization, that this is a focal point, and they want to make sure that folks feel safe to share personal, important, and maybe even to an extent vulnerable and private parts of themselves to one another, because my fellow colleague means me well, or this is a safe space in which I can do so. And so that's so very important. And that has a huge impact on retention. Right? Because, if you go down to the most basic level, it's about relationships, right? The relationships that we share with one another that makes for a good environment, that makes for somewhere we want to be. It's why we get into relationships with significant others, right? Because we enjoy how we feel when we're around them. They add value to our lives in ways that we're like, okay, I want more of that. It's the same way with organizations. Right. And those are the ways to retain folks. Those are the ways to be able to weather economic turbulence that we've seen, right? Certainly from the pandemic and what's going on now is when you have that and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion are present within an organization and are a priority within an organization, people are more likely to say, okay, well, yes, maybe this particular year because of the economic conditions, we can't get raises or we can't get bonuses. But you know what? I love this organization so much. I actually have affinity towards my colleagues and my managers and the leadership of this organization that I'm going to ride the storm with them.
Right.
Like true loyalty. Right. And so that's really beautiful, but you've got to have the right culture in place if you want to reap those tangential benefits when things get a little bit, off kilter economically and so forth.
Yeah, that was very well said, because it's so important to have that loyalty and to have that relationship between the employer and the employee, to know that you have the support of your manager and your manager's manager and your manager's manager, but also your teammates. So that was very well said. I wanted to ask you, Yvonne, you had actually, it was a post that you posted on LinkedIn recently. It was about inclusive language. And I thought it was really great. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because I feel like it ties into what we're talking about right now. But, talking about how people talk to each other, right? The conversations that people have, being more thoughtful, like you were saying, Tom. And the importance of inclusive language and how to use it. I feel like it'd be really good for you to kind of talk a little bit about that, because I think people want to know more about how to even do that.
Yeah. So, along with the culture shifts that we're seeing in organizations and society, we are seeing the shift in languaging. Right? The things that we used to say that were considered, quote unquote, politically correct are no longer, right? Because people have stood up and said, no, this was allowed before, but this is offensive to me and I have a right to say so. And so as a society, we're moving towards being more thoughtful, as Tom mentioned, about the things that we say, and more importantly, how we make people feel, right? The difference between intent and impact. And for those of your listeners who don't really know those differences, when we think about intent and the things that we say or we do, right? We're thinking about it from our own mindsets and our own heart sets, right? This is my goal with this communication or what I'm doing. And oftentimes we're not thinking about the individual, the recipient of that, and the impact that it would have on them. And so what we see right now is this shift, like, no, you don't get a pass on certain things that you say or behaviors based on your own thoughts and feelings about the intent. You need to be focused on the impact of those words and actions. And you are responsible to an extent for that, whether that causes harm, whether that causes damage. And so what we're seeing with language in particular is we're seeing a shift where we don't get to paint everybody with a broad brush, right? We think about, let's just say, for example, gender, right? Where we always had binary, right? It was okay to say he, she only. It was okay to say, hey guys, when you walk into a meeting and so forth. But now we're more culturally aware that people want to be accepted for themselves. We have people who say, hey, I'm of a different sexual orientation, or I identify differently. And the expectation is that you're going to use inclusive language as you're engaging with them. Whether you're engaging them verbally one-on-one. You're engaging with folks through social media channels, whether or not you're using, as another example, pronouns, right? Which is very important. And allowing people to provide their pronouns to let you know how they want to be addressed. And then the responsibility of that individual to make sure that they're using the correct pronouns when they're addressing folks. So that is definitely part of this culture compass, if you will, when it comes to inclusive language. I would say the same thing with disabilities, right? And so folks are now don't want to be known as the disabled. I am a distinct individual with disabilities. I am not my disability. I'm not defined by it. And I don't want other people defining me that way either. And so even the disability community is pushing back and saying, this is not okay how you've referred to us over the years. And we want to be respected because we have, just like someone able-bodied, fully able-bodied, we have intrinsic value. And we want to make sure that that's recognized. Mm-hmm. So, you're just seeing this shift, and I think it's really important for organizations to educate themselves and even individuals to educate ourselves to understand where the language is at right now, how it continues to iterate and get better and more inclusive over time, and to hold our own selves responsible for the language that we use. But we are on a learning curve, mm-hmm. right? And so, and Alicia and Tom, you know this from my trainings, right? There's got to be a grace given mm-hmm. to one another, that we're not going to get it all right, because this is a relatively new phenomenon. And people are in the process of learning and growing through this. And so, I would encourage, your listeners and folks that if you kind of step in it, if you will, and you make a mistake, just acknowledge it, make amends, and move forward quickly. Mm-hmm. I will say that it's interesting. I was talking to someone yesterday, and we were actually carpooling somewhere. And the person had intimated to me quite some time ago about having children. And I was like, oh, this is great. How are the kids? How's your wife? And I just made, without even realizing it, right? And we talk about unconscious bias, this assumption that this gentleman had kids. And so I think my brain just made that automatic connection to wife. And he quickly corrected me. He said, well, my husband. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize. I was like, I am so sorry. And the gentleman said, no, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. And I said, I am so sorry. I realized that my brain made that automatic association. Mm-hmm. And I should have really said your partner, your spouse, because mm-hmm. I knew that he was married. Mm-hmm. And so I use that as an example that, yes, folks, even the DEI lady occasionally makes, missteps. As much as we try to be, as accurate as we can be when we're engaging with others, because of the information that's already stored in our brains, we might make, that wrong association. But I took my own advice, and I mm-hmm. quickly, apologized and said, oh, my sorry, I'm bad. And he was like, no, don't worry. You didn't know. And mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, but I do know now. So, and all was quickly forgiven, and we moved forward, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
He didn't take it as some major offense. I didn't feel like the worst person in the world. Mm-hmm. And all is well. And so I just want to encourage listeners that, you're not going to get it right all the time, but you do your best.
Right.
But part of that is that personal self-education that we're all responsible to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's also important about that self-education is having conversations with people about things that they just don't understand, right? So I see a lot on LinkedIn. There's this other woman that I follow where she's also like a DEI practitioner, and she has a lot of conversations with a friend of hers who debates a lot with her on things, but it's very And what she does is she actually posts like what they discussed and how it went, and it's very friendly. They're good friends, but there are things that sometimes he doesn't understand about what she's doing or what the topic is. And but what I love about it is that she always talks about how they continue to learn from each other. And so I think it's really important for people to, if there's something you don't understand, come to me. I'm the Jedi director at HRP. We can talk about it, right? Or go to someone else that is that you can confide in or have a good conversation with when you don't understand something. There's so many resources out there too that you can look up and read through if you don't understand something. But I think that we all do have that responsibility to educate ourselves on this stuff and ask questions and be part of a dialogue, because I always learn something new every time I do something DEI related, and I love it because it gives me more tools in my tool belt, right? So that way, if I run into a situation that's similar, I can, bring up that example or bring up that resource. So I encourage people to, ask the question. Don't think that it's dumb or offensive. I get that a lot too. We're like, oh, I don't want to be offensive. I was like, no, because you truly want to know the answer to this, right? And there really is something important about taking that extra step to learn something and to get more information.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, there are myriad ways. There's tons of resources out there, right, for people to learn. And taking up that mantle and educating oneself, it is important, right? Because, and you and I, we have talked about this as women of color, that, oftentimes when people don't understand something, they'll just like go directly to the resource and take this position of like, please, I need you to educate me, but aren't really taking responsibility for themselves as the initial step. And so you have people who are saying, especially I'll speak to it as a woman of color, where people would come to me and just ask me everything that they ever thought of. And I'm supposed to be like this, Encyclopedia Britannica of everything Black. And I'm always like, we're not a monolith. What Yvonne thinks does not speak for the entire culture. But whatever it is, I am always appreciative if people have taken the time, rather than coming to me as their sole resource, of taking the time to educate themselves first and let me help to fill in any of the gaps, right? Or if there's some aspect where you're like, okay, I watched a video about the whole hair touching thing, and so I really don't understand, is it okay or is it not okay, and under what circumstances, and all of this, and should I ask first, should I not ask at all? Like, I appreciate that people have actually taken the time to do their due diligence first, and then come to me if you need further explanation.
And we actually had that topic come up in one of our Jedi workshops earlier this year.
Yes,
one
we
of
did.
The staff members said that, well, explain this to me. It was great. And it was and that was like, I wish we got more of that in that session too, because that's what I mean. Like, ask the question. If you don't understand, just ask. And it allows for people to comment on it and just, learn. I just think it's a beautiful thing.
It really is. And I'm going to say this, and this might be somewhat, maybe even a little bit controversial for communities of color, but we also have from my vantage point, an amazing opportunity right now to help to educate, to debunk myths and stereotypes. And I have talked to some folks, unfortunately, who push back and say, not my job. There's enough stuff out there. I want no parts of it. And I can understand. I understand the emotional trauma. I understand the frustration, the exhaustion, the Black exhaustion, if you will, as it's commonly referred to, behind all of that. But I do think that we do better by being part of bridging the gap between cultures, and certainly when it comes to racial divisions, by finding ways to connect rather than to separate. And so I'm never going to say to somebody, go read a book, versus like you said, if they have a particular question for me, I might ask them, what have you done to educate yourself on this particular topic, in hopes that they have. And if they haven't, I'll make a recommendation to them and then kind of redirect them and say, but if you have further questions after this, let me know. I'm glad to, discuss with you. I never turn down the opportunity for that, right? Because I want to be part of the change that I want to see.
Right.
I want to take an active part in that. And part of that action aspect is being willing to talk to people and to destigmatize those type of conversations, to create more comfort around those conversations. That's part of how we get beyond this, is by normalizing these conversations, both in family settings, in community settings, and definitely in the workplace. But if we shut down and say that certain things are off limits, right, of topics to talk about, we're going to find ourselves in the same place that we've been for years and years and years, and we're going to undermine the progress, I think, that we've made.
So I love what you said there, Yvonne, about be the part of the change that you want to make, because I feel like I've been doing that for a while now with the different organizations and getting Jedi started here at HRP. And, I really want to encourage other people to do the same thing. If there is something, I don't care what it is, right? But if there is something where you see, I really want to see change here. What is the smallest thing that you can do to be part of that change, no matter where it is, what it is. I feel like if we all kind of did that, a little bit, each time, that we'll start to see change. And I feel like we're in a place with, when we talk about sustainability and all the things that are actually really happening in the world today, it would be great if we all kind of took a part of that and moved it forward.
Yeah. What do you think, Tom? Like, for you, what does that feel like on a personal level?
I think it is very important for all of us to be a part of that change, especially for those of us who have benefited from not having to be the ones that have to do the work.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I think a lot of the times when you encounter people who have some resentment to this, what they aren't really realizing is that for the first time, the balance of responsibility is shifting away towards a certain group of people and onto them, who have not had to be thoughtful or worried about particular things. And for me, that especially comes through when you're thinking about language and intent and language and the meaning of language. I think a lot of people have kind of gone through life with this assumption that language has no meaning outside of intent. But then it's whose intent? Because every person in a conversation has their own understanding of what language means. And so you may intend something, but you still have to agree with the person you're speaking to on what the thing means. And if there isn't an agreement there, it doesn't really matter what you intended.
Yeah. Wow.
All right, Tom.
All right. Mic drop on that.
I think, and this might be too dramatic of an example.
No. Bring it.
But the analogy that I keep going back to, because I think it does make it very clear for people, is drunk driving. If you drink and you get behind the wheel and you cause a car accident, you certainly didn't intend to do that.
Yep.
But because you were reckless in your decisions, something has happened that has had a real impact on someone else, and you can't ignore, and that you are responsible for.
Right. And that you can't take back, right? And to your point, same thing with language and the words that we use and how we treat one another, right? Once we say or do the thing, you can apologize, but the impact has already occurred. And there are things that, cause very deep harm to other individuals. And we need to be thinking about other individuals in that way. And so I love the fact that, for you, that is something that's very personal, and I think that's the thing is, some people look at Jedi and DEI and they say, oh, it's so big, it's so vast, like I can't even wrap my head around it all. And I'm going to take a line from my new friend, Adrian Billing-Smith, who says, and Adrian, don't kill me if I get this wrong, but it was something along the lines of, I don't need you to move the mountain, I just need you to pick up a stone, right? And what that basically says is, we can all do our part. Find the thing that moves you most. Find the thing that irritates you most, whatever the injustice, right? That thing is, and lend yourself to it, whether that's time, whether that's resources, whether that's coming on a podcast and talking about it, or joining a clubhouse discussion, if that means, being a part of social justice movement in some way, if that's being a part of your organization's employee resource groups, Jedi groups, getting involved, lending your voice, your time, your talent, your capabilities, your intellect to those things. When we start to do things and each individual does it, we get to see some really amazing change happening. And I feel like we're starting to see that. It might not be at the fastest pace for some communities, for some organizations, but if we just all hang in there and keep going, I think we're gonna come to a really beautiful place, and not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. Because this is exactly what, when we think of civil rights era leaders, right, that came before us, that were doing this work in some might say much harsher circumstances and societal conditions, they put their feet to the ground, and they petitioned, and they walked, and they did strikes, and they boycotted buses, and they did all these things for us. Mm-hmm. So what more of a responsibility do we have as being a part of mankind than to move the ball further down the field for the next generations, right? I know, Alicia, you have small children. I have a teenage daughter, but I want it to be different for her. I want it to be different for the generations that may come from her. Mm-hmm. I don't want her to be sitting there at my age on a podcast. Who knows what they'll have by then, technologically, but to be having these same conversations, or to say, I can hearken back to X amount of years ago, 30 years ago. I think I just gave my age. When my mom was having these same conversations, saying the same thing, and we've moved the needle very little.
Right.
And I would imagine for you, it's the same, or if we had siblings or whatever, we want it better for them.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I started doing the work that I did. It was right after I had my son, and it just, I don't know, I just started to, one of the things that I thought a lot about when I was pregnant was, I was very fearful for his life, and same thing with my daughter, same thing, just thinking about, I want them to be successful. Like, I was just thinking a lot about, the life they would live, and, goodness, I just want them to be happy and kind and successful. And then in that same thought, it was like, well, what are all the different things they're going to have to deal with? Being Black and Puerto Rican was a big thing for me. And just dealing with that from, they're not Black enough, or they're not Puerto Rican enough, or, my daughter has this amazing, beautiful curly hair, and everyone's going to want to pet her, like
my daughter's same boat. Yeah.
So like seeing those things, like as they were little, I'm just like, I just want to do something that will hopefully, decrease the odds of them having to deal with stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that they have been my drive for this work, and I'm very, very blessed with them.
All right. So did you hear that, leaders? Like right here on this podcast, right? You have two women of color who are saying, like, this is about the generations to come. And so I would encourage any leaders that are listening to this to be thoughtful and personalize that for you, right? What kind of experience do you want your daughters or your sons or whatever the orientation of your children are, what kind of experience do you want them to have? What don't you want them to have to deal with when they get to where you are? Regardless of the industry, the career path, whatever it is that they end up doing, if you don't want this, what we're talking about right now, being necessary in terms of trying to correct where the culture is right now, then take up the mantle for yourself. Take up the mantle for yourself and be very intentional and specific about what you're going to do to move justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion forward from a personal and professional standpoint.
Well, thank you so much, Yvonne, for joining us today. This was awesome. I'm so glad. I look forward to having more conversations with you on HRP 312 podcast.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yay.
Great. One of the player topics was pop culture items like music, movies, whatever, that you always hated that now you've come around to and love.
I don't know. I feel like for me, I always like the stuff that nobody likes.
Yeah.
And I still do. Like, I mean, a lot of people like, I think, horror films, right? And like the next Halloween, I think is coming out on the 15th. And like people are calling me about it. They're like, do you know it's coming out? I'm like, you already know. Like, I'm so excited about it. And it's so funny because like the last Halloween that came out, you know, we thought he was done. Like he was finished. She finished him. Mm-hmm. She did not. Yeah. I'm super excited about that.
Mm-hmm. My example was the music of ABBA. I hate that song. It was so annoying to me forever. That stupid Mamma Mia musical. I hated all that stuff. And now I'm just like, yeah, I love these songs.
Really?
Yeah.
What did it for you?
It was probably TikTok because they had the ending of Chiquitica, that like piano where they're pounding away on it. It's like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah. And you love music too.
Oh,
so yeah, that's cool.
I'd probably say any music that my dad listened to when I was a kid.
That's a good one.
Because it was just like, you can't like what your dad likes. Like, that's old people music. And now you're like, oh, that's the best music.
Yeah. See, so that's exactly my point, right? So, like, my dad listened to the Temptations, the Four Tops. Like, he loved, I think it was like 92.6 was the station he listened to. And I always loved it, and I still love it. It's got that good Motown music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always loved it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My dad always listened to like I want to say like, I don't know, 60s, 70s, 80s rock, pretty much like that, just like classic rock. And he always had like forever he had like the original like Sirius radio before it was like XM radio or one or the other. I don't know. They were like totally different. There were two different ones at one point. And he would always listen to Grateful Dead radio. And I'd always just be like, oh, this is so boring. My God, this is horrible. And now it's like probably half of what I listen to is just like that kind of music. And it's just funny that it's like completely changes. But it's like, I think it's more of like a defiance thing at first, right? Like you're kind of like, no, I'm listening to, the cool stuff. And then it's like, you get old and you're like, no, he was right.
Well, it's familiar when you get old. It's almost like, just remembering the time from when you were young, and it's actually very familiar. And you're like, no, I like this. Like, it's something good.
Yeah, I agree. But for like movies and stuff like that, I can't really think of anything that I hated and liked. I think I probably liked so many movies that were so bad. Like I probably liked a lot of movies that people hated, but I liked them. I kind of still do.
You still have terrible taste.
I do. I still have pretty bad taste, but yeah. Until Tom talks about it, I'm like, maybe I do hate that movie. Tom gets all introspective on like the what it's supposed to mean, and I'm just like, No, I don't think during movies. It's just kind of like
I noticed.
It's just kind of, but that's what a movie is. You just sit down and you.
No, it's a spectacle.
Well, what's the difference?
I mean, a spectacle is just anything that like wipes out your attention and sense of self for a moment. It allows you to get through the day by obliterating your awareness. It could be literally anything.
I feel like that's most movies that I watch.
That's like Netflix.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's the definition of Netflix.
It's just noise as opposed to, film or cinema is art that is supposed to challenge something, whether that be your emotional status quo or prime you to think about something in a new or a different way.
Those are basically all the Oscar-winning movies. So when the Oscars come out and the winners come out, you're like, never seen any of these. Mm-hmm. And then you go watch them and you're like, it does all of that. You cry, you self-reflect, and you're like, this is a great movie. No wonder why it won. Those kinds of movies for sure. But like when I think about the movies I watch and I still love, it was actually we had a 312 last year. It was one of the virtual 312s, and we were talking about this. And I just put it out there. I'm like, I like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, and I like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Like, those were my favorite. And everyone, like, ruined me on that call. They were like, what do you mean? And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? He's like the man, both of them. So it's just so funny that it's nostalgic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have all of those movies on DVD, and my son knows exactly who those people are. Like it's just, I don't know. There's something about it. It was great.
It makes me think of an interesting distinction that I was thinking about earlier today. The difference between favorite and best, where for me, best is something that is so gripping or investing or just such a dominating experience that you can only do it in like every now and then or if you're in the right mood, right? Like you couldn't do it all the time, whereas favorite is something that you could do constantly, right? Like the best meal I've ever had, I couldn't eat that every day. I wanted like maybe once a year I do that and I really experience it. Favorite is like a bowl of cornflakes. I could eat that all the time, every day, but I would never like suggest it as the best meal I've ever had.
Right, right. I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Like when we watched the Oscar winning movie, it was Hacksaw Ridge.
Oh yeah.
And that movie was like, I was tore up by that movie. Like I was just like, oh, this is the best movie I've ever seen. And I've only watched it once though, because some of those movies that are so impactful, like I can't watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I just can't. But that movie was great. But like, yeah, I have some movies that I literally run in the background always, like almost every Adam Sandler movie is always there. But you're right, Tom. It's definitely like there's a difference in the best and the favorite. Mm-hmm. And for me, what I noticed, because Lance, my husband, he will always say, you watch the same show, same movie all the time. Why do you do that? And I'm like, there's something about the movies and the environment that the movie is in that I love so much. So like I'm very big on movies that are in big cities or things that I like, or if it has anything to do with the beach or whatever. The location is so important to me for like a movie that's going to be on all the time. I don't know. There's just something about it.
It's almost like you're living through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do it. That's my reason, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I love to rewatch not just movies, but specific scenes from movies and like think about how they got the shot and like what they was trying to communicate with it. Like I just watched scenes, not even Goodfellas, but just scenes from Goodfellas over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Have you been doing that recently, or have you always done that?
That's what I do all the time instead of sleeping. Yeah. Just laying in bed with my laptop over there, and I'm like, yeah. Goodfellas. Yeah, that's
a good movie, though. Mm-hmm. Goodfellas is great. Great movie.
I feel like there's a lot of, like, classic, like, people would be like, oh, yeah, that's, like the way that you talk about Sopranos.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's so many things like that I've never seen. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I have never, there hasn't even been a moment where I've been like, I should watch that. Like, I feel like I've just, like, I just continue not seeing them. I don't know why, but.
Did you watch The Sopranos?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've never seen that. I've never seen... like any of The Godfather, never seen Goodfellas. I've never seen
Scarface.
Never seen Scarface.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm trying so hard not to judge him. Like, I'm just letting you just talk, and I'm like, I'm not going to.
I don't know if
him.
it's just like a genre of movies that like my parents maybe just never watched.
Mm-hmm.
Either never watched or they were like, you can't see that. Like,
well, that plays a role, definitely. I mean, different generations too. What was playing in the house,
mm-hmm.
or I always notice, like, the reason why I like Jean-Claude Van Damme so much is because my brother did. So in your house and the family, like, if people are watching or talking about this stuff, you automatically just get into it. Like, all the Bruce Lees, all the Rockies. Are you kidding me? And then going over which Rocky is best. I mean, I still have that argument today, like, so all those movies just played in the house, and then that's why you watch them now still.
For the record, which is the best Rocky?
4.
Okay.
Simple.
Again, just to reiterate my point, I've never seen any of the Rockies either.
Oh my gosh, Everett, what are we gonna do?
Like, if you sat down with me and like went through like those kind of movies, you'd be like, "Have you ever seen a movie?" Like, I feel like that's like when people start talking about those, I'm like, ooh, I guess I really haven't seen much.
Well, what is your favorite movie?
Whatever the latest Marvel movie
No,
is.
that's not true. Well, I as a kid, I was huge on Star Wars, so I would have to pick either Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, probably between those two.
Mm-hmm.
I have old, like, pretty, like, they're in their probably mid-40s now, cousins, and they obviously, like, Star Wars came out way before I was even born. So, like, me liking the original trilogy is, like, really weird, like, especially amongst, like, my friends and stuff like that. So, like, they watched those movies, I watched it with them, and then I was like, oh, these are the best movies ever. And I remember, like, when the new ones came out, 7, 8, and 9, like, all my friends were like, oh, like, I might go see that. I've never seen any of the other ones, though. And I'm like, like, the fact that, like, no one has seen the original trilogy would just, like, blew my mind. It's like, how have you not seen, like, 3 of, like, the biggest movies to ever exist?
They're long movies, too. Like,
they're not that long.
They're long. Like, me and Lance talked about, like, watching the entire, like, doing the whole thing in, like, one day, and I'm like, that we can't even do that.
Well, you just skip the prequels. It's easy enough.
But yeah, I've actually haven't seen the Star Wars. I mean, I did when I was young, but, like, I don't know what's going on. I used to think that Spaceballs was Star Wars for, like,
I mean, yeah, that's like, based on it.
Yeah, but, like, I used to think that was the Star Wars when I was young.
Yeah,
which is horrible. But I mean, Spaceballs is great. But yeah, how about you, Tom? Favorite
movie
all time?
Vertigo.
What about best movie?
Yeah,
same.
You just contradicted your own point.
In this case, they're crossovers. I've seen Vertigo more than any other movie. I've easily watched it like 200 times.
It's really hard to determine, though, like, the best favorite movie. I mean, because any movie that you love it satisfies a different thing, like, I love The Goonies. That's probably the movie that I always say that I love when someone asks me, but there's just so many other movies out there that were, like, impactful, like Hacksaw Ridge or 12 Years a Slave. I thought was an excellent movie that really depicted a lot of what happened back then. So I love Just Go With It. One of Adam Sandler's. It's just
Adam Sandler's so good. I can watch all those movies.
That's My Boy. What I love so much about That's My Boy with Adam Sandler is, like, it was the first time since, like, his older movies where he finally, like, was, like, who he used to be in those other movies. Like, it had been years. What am I thinking? What's the name of his other movie? The one with the golf movie. What's the name of it?
Oh,
Billy Madison.
No,
I'm sorry.
Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore, yes. Like, he hadn't been that in so long, and then That's My Boy. He came out, so good. Just super inappropriate. Just, like, so funny. He's great, and I love that he's, on Netflix now doing all this cool stuff. So.
Yeah, I remember we watched the new one, the Halloween one he put out last year,
yeah,
Hubie Halloween.
Yep.
I was like, this is literally an Adam Sandler mashup. It's just like every movie in one movie.
Yep.
He's just not even trying at this point. He's just like, you know what? I'm just going to do, like, I think when he didn't win something for Uncut Gems, he was like, I'm going to make the worst movie you've ever seen.
It's literally what they did.
Was so good. Uncut Gems.
Oh my God.
Was so
I love that
good.
movie. Yeah.
I've never been that
great.
talking about being in a movie theater and not thinking. That was like one of the only times I've been like, I am like having a panic attack in the movie theater.
Yeah.
I was so, oh my gosh. Like that movie and I think Inception were the two movies where I was just like,
I still haven't seen Inception.
Oh, come on, Everett.
Sorry.
Is he here? Is he here, Tom? I
See,
don't know.
this is what I said would happen.
Like he starts to disappear.
I know.
Yeah. Uncut Gems, I literally had anxiety like in the chest. It was so bad, but it was such a good movie. And I didn't expect that either. I didn't know what the movie was about. And that's always cool too. That happened with Get Out, that movie that was done by Peele. Was it Peele?
Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele, yeah. And same thing, like we finally got to see that movie and everyone was talking about it, but no one would say what it was about. And watching it, and Jordan Peele is great because he adds that horror comedy into it. Oh, it was excellent. So that was a good one too.
Have you seen the movie from the other movie made by the brothers that directed Uncut Gems?
No.
It's called Good Time. Has Robert Pattinson in it. That's even more intense and like panic attack inducing than Uncut Gems.
Oh, that one gave me real anxiety.
Yeah.
You know what? There was another movie that came out a few years ago. I think it was called Escape. That movie was, it was between that one and Uncut Gems that I had the most anxiety. The guy moved to, I can't remember which country it was, right outside Vietnam, I think, moved to a country for work, and then the country got taken over, and everyone was getting murdered. And so he had to get out with his family. He had his wife and his two small children, and they were literally running from these people who were trying to kill them. It was, me and Lance were like, it was like 3 a.m. We couldn't sleep, and we were watching this thing, and it was so crazy. And that movie was really, I think it was called Escape. Check it out. It was great. If you want that high adrenaline rush.
Yeah, that was like when I first saw, what was it? Oh my God, what's the name of the movie? Quiet Place, the first one.
That was good.
That in theaters was like, yeah. It's really weird. I hate horror movies. I love thriller movies.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like I definitely would pick that over. Yeah, I just never understood horror movies. They just always seem kind of like unrealistic and dumb to me. Whereas like, which is, I mean, kind of a dumb argument considering I like comic book movies. It's also unrealistic and dumb, but
well, it definitely sounds that way when you talk about how pumped you were that like new Doctor Strange movie is going to be a horror movie. And it's like, do you like horror movies?
Well,
it's
not, because I don't think it's going to be a real horror movie. I mean, it's like, it's horror movie and it'll have horror elements, but not like a full on like horror movie.
Well, good horror movies usually have a very intense and fast-paced plot that keeps you engaged, and they have striking, interesting visual imagery, and there's a lot of opportunities for tension between the characters. So good ones end up being good movies.
Also, too, so I love horror movies. So there's different types of horror movies, too. So you have, like, the Saw kind of movies that mess with your head, and I actually don't like those at all. And then you have the ones that are about entities and demons and things like that. And then you have the ones that are about murders and serial killers. So there's categories there.
That's true.
Like, which one do you want? Like, I love the stuff about ghosts and entities and things like that. It's always been an interest of mine. And then serial killers, can't go wrong with a serial killer. Like, you can't go wrong there. So it's, whichever one you like. But they're good.
The only ones I'll watch are the old Friday the 13th Jason movies. Because they are hilarious. They're so funny. If more movies were like that, I would watch them.
So when you say a horror movie, are you thinking like specifically about like slasher movie stuff, or are you thinking anything that would fall into the category of horror movie?
I guess I more think of like the ones that are just like excessively gory and like, you know, there's like haunted, like, you know, spirits in your walls and like that kind of like just like very general, like anyone could have thought of this horror movie.
Okay.
Like serial killer stuff, I guess I don't really think of horror movies. I don't know why. I feel like that feels more thrillery to me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some of my favorite movies are horror movies, but they're not like slasher movies. They're it's like The Shining or The Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, like
I
Blair
love the
Witch.
Project.
When that movie came out, that was like I was like, I think I was like 14, and I'm in my room like half asleep, and my brother comes home. My brother's 5 years older than me, so he was like 19 or whatever. He just went to see it with his friends, like the night it came out in the movie theater. Comes home, wakes up my mother, and starts telling my mom about this movie that's real. Because remember, I don't know if you guys even remember, but when that movie came out, everyone thought it was real. So he comes home, he's freaking out. He's telling my mom word for word how the movie went. And he's like, they're still out there, Mom. They're still out there. And I'm just like listening like, I want to go. Where are they? You know, because again, I was so into that stuff. I remember the next day, I'm like, we need to see this movie. And it wasn't until like a week later where they were all on like Jay Leno or something. That movie is so good. And even still, if I watch Blair Witch, I'm still like, this is freaky.
That still gets me every time.
Oh yeah. That's so well done. And then if you think about the Paranormal Activities 1 through 4, just again, with the camera, you just going through, I don't care. They have the stupidest ones on Netflix right now or like Amazon Prime. If you're walking with a camera into a dark room and somebody jumps, you're jumping, like whatever, and that's the point, right? So
those are always my favorite when that happens. You're like,
great.
damn it, I knew it was gonna happen.
I'm always like,
yeah,
like I don't.
Or like you've seen the movie before and it still gets you. You're like, why? I thought I was gonna be the only one to just sit here and be like, haha, got you, not me.
Oh, so funny. I definitely, my sister-in-law, she would never go see horror films. She's so scared. And me and her will argue about, you know, what's scarier, a scary movie or a roller coaster, because I don't ride roller coasters, right? So I would be like, well, you can die on a roller coaster. You can't die if you watch this movie with me. And she's like, nope, never. I'm never going to watch it. So funny.
I would be on the side of scary movie is scarier.
Yeah. I can't get anywhere near a roller coaster. Can't do it.
I can't do it either.
I love roller coasters.
Oh God, I hate them. I hate them so much.
I was watching TikTok yesterday, every day, and there was this one guy, he was hanging off of a hot air balloon ledge, and so he's like, you know, waiting there for them to get the camera right because he's just going to drop because he has the, you know, the parachute on and stuff, and he just drops, and he's like, I don't know, 20,000 feet in the air, and all you see, it's beautiful, right? You know, he drops and he puts his hands behind his head like he's laying down and just like takes it, and I'm just like, how do you not get that knot in your stomach that you get when you free fall, you know? Like, it's just amazing to me how people can ride rides like that. Like, I just find it so incredible that you can do that and not be afraid. Like, that's crazy. It's cool.
Mm.
Yeah, I've been on a roller coaster in so long. I want to go now.
See, like, wouldn't you? You're not scared, especially since you haven't done it in a long time?
Not at all.
Oh, my gosh.
No, if anything, I want to do it more.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's like just you get all excited when you sit down and
yeah, I mean it's the thrill. It's the adrenaline. It's the
oh my gosh.
I was in several major car accidents before my first roller coaster ride. So to me, a roller coaster is very much the same feeling as being in a bad car accident.
Jeez.
So horrible.
Except it goes on for several minutes instead of 10 seconds or something.
Oh, God.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
That's
about
terrifying.
They make a scary movie about that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they should.
Jeez.
It's very scary.
Oh, no, now I'll always think about that when I go to a roller coaster. Thanks, Tom.
The only thing that's scarier than that is when you go to Six Flags with your friend who it will make your life hell if you don't go on all of the roller coasters with her. And it's like, do I want to put up with that on the drive home, or am I going to do the roller coasters?
Well,
I guess I'll do the roller coasters.
It's funny because I was always in your guys' position as a kid. Like, I was like, no way, no chance will I go on a roller coaster. And then I don't know what happened. I just went on one. I went on Superman. That was the first one I went on.
Wow.
Because everyone was like, it's the best. And I was like,
it's the scariest.
look at that line. It's got to be good.
Yeah. 3 hours later.
Yeah. So I got on and I was like, yeah, it's good. I got to do it again. There's one in New Jersey that's like a 90-degree angle.
I probably saw it on TikTok. I feel like I saw
King
that.
Ka.
That's the one.
Oh, I want to ride that
Dude,
so bad.
Stop.
I want to ride that so bad. Yeah.
I remember, so I've dated guys in my past that liked roller coasters and I didn't. So that was always a bad thing, going to Six Flags with a guy that I'm sitting on the bench doing the wave, right? I'll never forget when I first met Lance. It was probably like our first date. And I'm like, do you like roller coasters? He was like, nope. I'm like, I'm marrying this guy. Like, I just, oh, thank God. Because, yeah, like going with friends or a person you're dating or whatever, it sucks because they're like, that was great, I'm going to go again. And you're like, I'm leaving. Like, this is the worst trip ever.
I loved I went to Disney February 2020, like right before COVID. Well, I guess during like the beginning of COVID, so not right before it, but right before everything shut down. And we had like the picture package or whatever. So like basically every ride right at Disney, you get the photo at like the best part of the ride.
Gosh.
Every single ride, every one of my wife's family members is just like completely like the scaredest person you've ever seen. They're all just like they just like they're about to die, and I'm always in the corner, just the biggest smile on my face. Look like I'm like literally like every picture. People are like, "Is this the happiest you've ever been?" And I was like, "I just like rides. Like I just like we were doing the Tower of Terror." Mm-hmm. And like at everyone in the pictures, like grabbing someone next to them with like the most like strained neck and everything. And I'm just like it's like I'm just in a normal elevator. Like it's so funny. But I don't know.
I like how they say that to Everett. Like, is this the happiest you've ever been? Like, yes, actually.
Yeah. So I like rides. I think they're.
Well, the funny thing is that I have rode. I did the bungee jump thing at Six Flags. I've ridden roller coasters. I've done a lot of them. So like I definitely tried it, and it was one of those things where like after you do it, I was just like, oh, that's not so bad. You know, it's always like that, but
not so bad, but I don't want to do it again.
Yeah. Well, it was a decade later or whatever, and I went on the pirate ship. You know, it's at every carnival. Actually did it in Salem when I was there with friends. And I was terrified. We sat right at the end because that was in my mind. Like, you always sit at the end. You always go to either end on the boat, you know. So I sat at the very end, and I thought I was going to fall out. I was screaming. There's actually video of me screaming on it. And I'm like, I'm really scared. I'm done. That was it for me.
I will say I like rides. I will never go on a ride at a carnival.
No.
Ever.
No.
Ever.
You got to grow up in a city, man.
They put those things together in like 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And they're like, they ride them up on trucks, and they're just like, haha, a carnival. And there's like, you know, I wouldn't even go on it if it was like the like merry-go-round. Like, I just feel like all that stuff, like you always see
unfolds.
Well, you always see videos of like they forgot to put a screw in, and the ride's going like, you know, out of control, and you're like, absolutely not.
They just had one. Did you guys see that on TikTok? It was a few weeks ago. Oh my gosh, it was at a carnival. Did you see that one?
I think I've seen it.
It was the one that goes around, but like the seats are facing out, so everyone's like facing out.
Oh no.
And it goes like this, right? Mm-hmm. And it started, the foundation of it started to like pucker, and so everyone's like walking by. Of course, you know, you got the person who's recording the whole thing not helping at all, and then just a bunch of people went on it and started holding it down. So they ended up holding it down.
Oh yeah, I did see this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I always wondered, I'm like, where's the guy? Where's the operator? Like, nowhere to be found. Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh man, yeah, no thanks. Terrifying.
Yeah, roller coaster design has been pushed to the limits of what the human body can take. They're shutting them down now because the constant ramp up to be more intense is resulting in human bodies deteriorating through the ride. Like they had to shut down one in Japan recently because people just kept getting broken bones from the
speed.
The forces being put on the human body on that roller coaster are more than it is physically possible.
And you got Everett there like,
It sounds like it's worth it.
When trains were first becoming a thing, like people were like, we can't ride this. The human body can't handle those speeds. If you go faster than 20 miles an hour, all your organs will rupture.
Well, that's what I think about the Elon Musk thing, the Hyperloop. You get to you go from New York to California in a few hours or something, some crazy high speed subway train. Mm-hmm. How would that not just
it's inertia?
Well,
you're accelerated at the same speed the thing is, so there's that's why in a moving car that's going 80 down the highway, everything's not flying to the back and pinned against the wall there.
Well, how fast did he say that was going to go?
I have no idea.
Because in China, they got ones that go 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, so. Japan's covered in high speed rail.
Yeah, so they're the innovators of that. So we could do it here definitely, and that would be awesome. But it's one of those things where I remember looking at this stuff when I worked at a previous engineering company. Something that fast, it's got to have its own, it can't be going through, the city, where people are walking and stuff. I mean, there's so much infrastructure to build something like that, but it could be done.
Yeah,
definitely.
The Hyperloop theoretically could bring passengers from city to city in less than 45 minutes, traveling at the top speed of 760 miles per hour.
It's got to be in the air.
10 to 15 times faster than traditional railroads.
That's crazy.
Well, Japan is the most densely populated country there is, and they have high-speed rail for decades now, and I believe there has not been a single fatality in the history of Japanese high-speed rail.
Are they all that the maglev one? Or
we've exhausted my knowledge of Japanese high-speed rail.
Vibranium?
Vibranium.
No, they're the rail is basically it levitates with magnets.
Vibranium. This is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Black Panther, baby.
I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I mean, I'll take your word for it.
I think
it is. I'm not going to look it up because now I'm right. So,
there's no one here to say you're wrong.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
I'm right.
There you go.
I had a question I might want to pose to you, Alicia.
Sure.
Not really a play hard one, but so Everett and I had a situation the other day when we were filming that was kind of a Jedi related conundrum that we had, where we were filming a scene and we're like, okay, now let's go talk to the top brass, and we're trying to think of synonyms for people in charge, and I think what was the one that we were like, we didn't know if there were going to be some kind of connotations to this.
Head honcho,
yeah.
Okay.
Or like, can we say that?
Head honcho.
Well, then we looked up other ones, and they all sounded bad.
Yeah,
it was I can't remember what the other ones were.
Top banana.
Yeah.
We're like, there's no way Top Banana does not have some kind of misogynistic background.
Well, and then you got the, oh my God, what was the other one? The Great White Chief was one?
Yeah.
I was I've never heard that, but why is that in there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting that you guys actually looked up the other terms.
Well, we Googled them, and then...
Because we're trying to find something that, we could say for certain did not have something.
Well, it was a
history.
little silly, and it wasn't off to the executives. It was something a little more
Well, who were you guys looking to actually speak to?
Yeah,
just leadership or?
Oh yeah, you, Dan, and Tad, pretty much, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the tone we wanted was something that was light and informal and a little silly.
Mm-hmm. So the best option probably would have just been leadership. And the reason for that is is because anyone could be in leadership. There is no take on gender there. You know, for instance, this is a little bit related, but I just want to bring up where someone had asked, you know, is it okay if I say, hey guys or hey gals? And it was like, just say, hey people, you know? So I think anything that kind of can cover, or even if someone was to, you always want to think about when you say something, what could anyone think that means? If it's as general as you can make it, the better. So in leadership, it could be anybody. When you say people, that could be any human, you know, so things like that. So I would say that, you know, something pretty generic like that would be best. But I think you guys are probably trying to be more creative in that, I'm sure. But that's the rule of thumb, right? You just want to make sure it's something where it is inclusive. So
I can't remember what you ended up saying. Just have to find out on YouTube.
Did you say to the top? Was it something top related?
It might have been like, it wasn't.
I got to go look through my Google searches again. See.
It might have been head honchos.
Head honchos.
Yeah, because that was clearly, because that was derived from a Japanese word for like person in charge or something.
Oh, okay.
So we could trace that one back to something.
But no, I think that could also work as well.
It was just funny because like Googling it, it's so like, it was like head honcho, numero uno, big kahuna. Like it was like everything was like, I feel like using a different culture. It felt like it was almost like no one uses that outside of like people just being like, oh, you know, numero uno, but like they don't care about like anything that's coming from, right? Like they're just like I feel like when people just like will like throw around like random like Spanglish words, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they'll just like kind of say something that like, oh, I'll just add an O to it and it's Spanish, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well the humor is supposed to come from, oh, isn't it, don't these foreign words sound funny?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad that you guys actually thought about that though, right? Because I think a lot of that, the whole Jedi mission is to really just get people to think about other people, or to think about, well, this doesn't sound right. Let's try to make this more inclusive or whatever. So good job, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Very, very proud of you.
Yeah, it's funny because there's so many things that like I've probably said a billion times that I've just like, you just say them because like, well, that's like something we did while we were kids, or that's just like a saying or like a story or a rhyme or something like that. And then like you look into it and you're like, oh no, like I had no idea that's what that was. Like it's just, it's crazy how much is out there that's just like, you don't, like you said, like don't even think about it. Like it's just totally like, well, that's just, you know, those are just the words. That's just what it is. And like, yeah, it's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that a lot of times when people do say things, and it kind of is tied to the cancel culture stuff too, in a lot of ways, where someone said something and then they apologize. And, you know, I think we need to give people grace when that happens, because, you know, when you honestly don't know something means that, or you don't know the background, like I think it's fair to say that, you know, I didn't know that, but now I learned, and I, you know, not only will I not do it again, I'm going to share my experience so people won't, you know, other people will learn. So yeah, it's happening more and more with so much these days. I think where we're doing our own research, but like learning about where things come from, and just trying to be better humans.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you say that about the, you know, giving people grace, because it's like, how do you expect anyone to like learn if you're just like, nope, you're done. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, sorry, you did one thing wrong, you're done. It's like, how is that showing anyone how to actually like navigate this?
Well, I think a lot of the conversation about it too is an echo chamber of people talking about how they can't say what they want to say anymore, and there's no one actually there like telling them they can't or anything. It's basic. There's like a general sense of like we need to be more careful and sympathetic with with our speech and how we interact with people. And the people who are in the position to actually find something offensive or be hurt by something, in my experience, they are rarely as upset when that happens as the people who feel like they can't say whatever they want to say anymore. Like there's so much anger and resentment from people who are like, wow, I want to say whatever I want. Why can't I say that? It's like, you're the one who's really mad here.
It's true. And a lot of it has to do with communication and just taking the time to communicate on the issue or what I don't know. I mean, ego gets in the way all the time with people. People, it is a position of vulnerability too, for you to be like, I don't get this. Can you teach me this? I think one of the things that I've noticed about learning, like the pronouns thing. So I think it's important to, when you're trying to understand that, right, is also when like you introduce yourself to somebody and you say your pronouns, right? Especially if you're in a space when you don't know anybody, it really does something for others to give them the opportunity to say their pronouns. And so I think about that a lot when, like, Tom, you were talking about how, people get so mad, and especially with like the pronoun situation, people do get, and when you kind of go into that a little bit more with the LGBTQ community, trans and things like that, and how gender versus sex and, that whole thing. But, at the end of the day, people are going to give you grace. Like, you don't know what someone's pronouns is if they don't have it like on their name badge or whatever. So, it's always good to just, introduce yourself and say your pronouns, because they will then say their pronouns, most of the time. And so then you can refer to them as whatever their pronouns are. So, I'm learning to do this a little bit more, because I have been in situations where, because I'm someone who usually says, hey guys, hey ladies, hey, and so I've learned to, in email and things like that, to just, address people as their name, because I don't know, if they go by she, him or they. So, it's just one of those things where, like, you're right, Tom, people are actually okay to be like, it's okay. You didn't know,
Right.
But once you know, then, we're good. Let's move forward. So,
yeah, one of the things that I have been happy that I can use now because of where I live is y'all.
Yeah, I've always used
I've
y'all.
I've never wanted to use it, because I'm like, it's one of those things like, oh, you went to Texas, now you say y'all all the time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you have an accent now, you wear cowboy boots and a hat. And it's like, no, it's it's the smartest contraction ever. Like, it's just like you just use it for everything. Like,
I love it.
It's like, why say, like, my favorite is when people say all y'all.
Oh gosh, it's like, no,
You're all you
word,
all.
yeah. Saying it twice.
Yeah, it's like, no, just say y'all. That works. You don't need to say all y'all.
I love y'all. I've been saying y'all forever, and I love it. It's like in my text, like, it's just always there. I use it all the time. I use it in emails. I use it on LinkedIn. Like, it's kind of like using ain't, but it's my word. I love y'all.
I definitely use it more over like text and email, just because I'm still getting used to saying it, and I feel like saying it just sounds silly sometimes. Like, you're just like, especially since like I never used it before. So like, if I don't see someone in 2 years because of COVID and I come back and I'm saying y'all, they're like, okay, whatever. We know you live in Texas. You don't have to prove it.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But yeah, I definitely like using that.
Yeah, it's great. Everyone from my city uses it pretty much. Like, it's a good, like you said, wraps everybody in. Love
Simple,
it.
quick, easy to say.
So are you guys going to see Halloween? What do you guys think? Have you seen the Halloweens?
What do you think?
Whatever. Have you seen the Halloweens?
No.
Really?
I've
None of them?
I've never been interested in slasher movies.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I've always been into them, but I'm just super excited that it's coming out. And if it comes out on HBO Max and I don't got to leave the house, y'all, listen. Listen. Oh, I hope so. I love October.
Yeah, I like Halloween movies, but I like like Halloween movies I watched when I was like 12.
like let's say
like Hocus
Halloween
Pocus,
Town,
Halloween
Hocus
Town,
Pocus,
yeah. So I guess basically Disney Channel movies, but yeah, I think it's more of just a nostalgic thing, and
totally,
because like Halloween now, it's like, it's fine. Like, you know, I get to, at least now, you know, I get to be near, like, in close to my niece and nephew and see them do their thing and
that's
wear their
fun.
costumes and go around with them and stuff like that. But yeah, and it's definitely, it's a little different in terms of, I mean, my wife is like, I don't know, like, you know,
she doesn't like Halloween.
She likes Halloween.
Yeah.
She could care less about any type of Halloween movie or any, like, she likes decorating. She likes she likes fall. But like Halloween movies, she just like, and I think it's because like she just didn't grow up with them. Yeah. Like she just never watched them. So it's like, it's that, like, exactly that nostalgia thing I'm talking about just doesn't exist for her. Like it's just like watching them now. She's like, oh, cool, a bad movie. Like it's like, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I like the season. I definitely like the Halloween Oreos. I always look forward to those.
See? There's always something for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I've always been a huge Halloween fan. You know, going to any haunted trail, any haunted house. I mean, it was like every weekend, where we going? You know, every scary movie, Halloween parties. How many can I get to in one night? Like, just so obsessed. And when it was so funny, up until me and my group of people started having kids, every October we would all get in the car and go to a different, you know, haunted spot. The best one, okay, this is awesome. So this was 2013. We went to the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, okay? Drove there, about 4 cars of us, okay? And I was so pumped about this because I have watched this historic building on TV. It's like one of the most haunted jails in the country, all this stuff. So I was like, this is exciting. So we get in the car, we get down there, lines long, whatever. So get up there to the front entrance and we got to sign the waiver. You know, there's a waiver to sign. And they have this option. I've been doing this a long time. Never had this option before. They had an option where if you put on a glow stick necklace, you can be part of the show.
Oh no.
Meaning that people will grab you, you know, they're not going to like hit you or anything crazy, but they'll kind of grab you or touch you or whatever, because typically they don't touch you. You know, they always say no one's going to touch you, but you can sign up for that. I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome. So you're going through the jail and a guy like put his arm around my neck and like had like a fake syringe, and it was so cool.
Oh my God.
You're getting grabbed through things, and it was awesome. And I was there was like 13 of us. I was the only one who did it. And I was like, we drove 3.5 hours, spent like $60. I'm getting my money's worth. It was awesome. So yeah, when you're into that stuff, and people know, anyone listening to this that's into it, they get it. Like they have those things now too, where you can pay. It's not the panic rooms, but like, have you seen this stuff where like you can pay to be in a situation like Saw? I would never do this because the Saw stuff, like I said earlier, is not my thing. Like that kind of messes with your mind, and it's like, oh, you got 5 minutes before your head explodes, like, you know, weird stuff. But they have like stuff that you can do. There's like a spot in New York, I think, that does it, where you can sign up to be in like a situation like that, and it's just, yeah, people get all into it. It's great.
That's the level of how interesting life is for some people, that they have to be put into a scary movie, feel like they're going to die, and pay for it at the very least. Oh my God.
Yeah, my brother sent me that link. He was like, interested? I'm like, no. I know I'm into it, but I ain't that into it.
Yeah. What did you do on Saturday? Well,
I pretended that I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I paid for it.
Yeah. Slept really good on Sunday, though.
Yeah. All right, guys. I got to pick up my son.
All right.
This was fun.
This was really good. Yeah. Very productive.
Love y'all.
Bye.
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 Thanks for joining us, everyone. 312 is a production of HRP Associates, produced, recorded, and edited by me, Tom Simmons, with technical assistance from Everett Anderson. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe and rate us 5 stars. Check out our YouTube channel as well, or reach out to us through hrpassociates.com to learn more about any of the services we talked about today. Stay safe, everyone. Till next time.